even if you're not doodling or on Facebook, sometimes people's focus wanders. But when students are not paying attention, isn't that the student's responsibility?
Yeah.
Clearly I understand that if I'm not doing a good job teaching and everybody's on Facebook, it's my problem. But just that, you know, isn't it more an issue that the student should be considering? Because when you're working, your boss isn't going to be tapping on your shoulder.
Yeah, I actually agree completely. Like, you hear it from people, like I hear it from my mom, I hear it from some of my friends' parents, like they're in business meetings and people are on their phones doing things. It doesn't change. People still get distracted. So it is your responsibility in the end. Like, if you're not going to pass this test because you weren't paying attention in class because you were on Facebook, it's not the teacher's fault that you were on Facebook the whole time. You had the option to stop. You had the option to not be so distracted or like try to focus or do what you had to do to like pass the test. Like you have to do, in the end, you have to buckle down and do what you have to do. If you can't pay attention in class, you have to find some way to figure things out and make it work.
I think a good example of a class where, and Harrison also touched on this, is where people, a big lecture format, and the professors say, okay, you don't need to use a laptop, just listen to me. And a lot of people are like, well, I can't just sit here and listen to somebody for an hour and a half. It's really difficult. So, you know, there has to be a kind of feedback between you and the professor. And a class I took from Professor Corrigan, Film 102 last semester, really exemplified that mutual engagement between students and teachers, because it was a class of this size. Nobody was allowed to use a laptop. We were all taking notes pretty rigorously too. And he would go ask people questions, you know, in a class of like 80, 90 people. I've never really had a class where that happened. And yeah, if you didn't know your stuff, then you got called out on it, and maybe he would ask you to leave because you didn't come prepared. But at least you were being engaged at a level that I think larger lecture halls where they're like, yeah, use computers, fine. People are just going to sit there and either record the lecture and go on Facebook, or they're just going to do something else. I think that there has to be a kind of response from the teachers have to take accountability for making their lectures engaging as well and maintaining students' interests. It's not all just like, oh, our students are all ADHD'd, riddled up, you know, kids who can't adapt to this, you know, academic environment. Like, we're here for a reason, but, you know, work with us.
Yeah, I think there's a middle ground somewhere between the, you know, nothing's new. You know, you could doodle, you could check Facebook, it's the same thing, and technology has totally revolutionized things. And I think what's happening is that, you know, obviously the tools change things, but we're just in a time in which new norms are being worked out, and students are getting used to using technology in the classroom, but also faculty are adjusting to having technology in the classroom. You know, in the same way that it's less disruptive now to have people using cell phones on a train, I find, than it used to be. It's a combination. People are a little bit more respectful, but also I'm more used to having the conversations going on around me.